Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Behind the Comics. I'm your host, Sean Fuller, and today I'm joined by a creator whose work hits hard, loud, and full of fire. We have John Dudley today, the mind
Howdy,
behind Big Shoulders.
howdy, Sean. Thanks for having me. It's cool to be
Yes.
here.
So now, if you love Chicago, heavy metal, and dragons, this comic is for you. We're going to dive into what inspires this world, how John builds such a raw, powerful energy into his storytelling, and what it takes to make comics that feel like electric guitars soloing across the skyline. So stay tuned, stirring up, and let's get behind the comics. All right. So, John, welcome to Behind the Comics. I have to ask, let's get started with your story. How did your journey into comics begin?
It started with reading comics. I was thinking about it recently. Actually, I started a Substack where I've kind of
Mm,
called Making Comics, where I've really been gathering my thoughts about this. So good question, top of mind. I would say it started in like the early '90s when I was a kid, and it started with me just catching images. It's a visual storytelling medium. Seeing some of the visuals, that I think for a lot of people with comics or any visual storytelling, it's like what are the visuals that bring you in?
mm-hmm.
For me, it was X-Men. I wish I could say what the actual first comic was I read, but I know the X-Men comics in the early '90s. Artist Jim Lee really,
Okay.
really caught my eye. Like X-Men #1 by Jim Lee. The comic started in the 1960s, but they relaunched in 1991, and Jim Lee had these covers that like
Okay.
they look like they were on fire. Like
I
being a
know.
kid and like scanning
And
the
he's
aisle.
yeah, exactly, especially when you're at the checkout counter and you're just walking by and you see this cool little magazine on a cover and you be like, "What the heck is this?"
Yeah, totally.
Okay, that
Yeah,
makes
that
a
was
lot of
it.
sense, though. That makes a lot of sense. So I was thinking you're gonna say you used to draw them or you used to cover splash pages, but it's like you got pulled in off the ad.
Yeah, raw visuals, and wanting to know like what's the deal. I remember there's a cover. If you look at X-Men #1, it was a wraparound cover, but there's part of it that has Magneto with his hand out, like, and I remember seeing that and just being like, "Who's that dude? Who that is a powerful dude. I want to know more." And barely being able to read at that time, but like just wanting more.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, that was it. It was the visuals that drew me in, and a little bit of boredom enough to be like, all right, I need to figure out how to read now.
Can
Um,
you remember the times when life used to be boring and we used to love it? Like the day they
yeah,
kind of feel every time. It's like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's
Kids have trouble learning to read now because they're not bored enough.
yeah, because they don't give them the space or time.
Right.
But so here's the question. I have a follow up then. So, was there a particular reason that made you say, "This is what I want to make," or
Mm,
what I want to do? Because that's a completely different thing. It's one thing to enjoy, but there's a different thing to be like, you know what, I want to actually do that.
yeah, yeah. I could get deep in the weeds, but yeah, I started the first comics I made were with a buddy. I was fortunate to have a buddy that also dug comics as much as I did, who was a much better artist than I ever was. My buddy Brian actually wound up making comics with him several times, but the first time was when we were in like seventh grade. Um,
Wow.
yeah, we'd go to the comic shop together when we'd go from talking about what comics we're gonna buy, what we're digging, to like what would our comic be, and we put some sketches on pages, and we never really went too far with it, but that was probably the inception at that point. Like, oh, this is something humans can actually do. And went to some conventions with him and other buddies, and saw the creators. I think that's a big piece of it too. As young as age possible, recognizing that the writers and artists and colorists and letterers, editors, they're real people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in seeing them, and like I think going to a convention is really a cool thing for people interested in comics, just to see the real people, like see kind of the reality of it.
And it's funny, it works both ways, especially because I know for a fact the reason why I started going to Comic Cons was because I wanted to get from behind the computer, because it's very easy, especially when you're a webtoons comic, to just put everything online and think everything is online and you drive everything through online revenues. But if you, I'm not sure if you're in tech at all, but in tech they tell you the only way to learn is to get out the door.
Yeah, that's a good. That's right.
So for us, for me, it was this the process of, and plus my boy always been telling me, Sean, you need to do X, Y, and Z to get in front of people. So I was like, all right, cool. And I went to my first Comic Con this year, and that's when I get to actually talk to people, and I get to see what actually moved them on certain stuff.
Yeah,
And, it's,
good
and,
point.
the and then the statement where someone says, not what you created for is what people buy it for. So it kind of confirms that sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, and it changes your relationship with the work in a way that can be positive. It can bring um, a different perspective to the work as well. But I think, yeah, more than anything, to your point, it it's just helpful to put the human faces to it.
Behind.
Um, yeah, and it revs you up, puts more fuel in your tank to see how the sausage is made, and
Yeah,
to
and
recognize that.
it works both, and it helps the kids to kind of see that they can also do it too, especially if they're doing it and they just didn't realize that other people say, "Yeah, you did a lot. Don't shy from that." So listen, my question is now. So you're from Chicago, okay? So
Yep.
how has the city influenced your creative style and your storytelling voice?
Yeah, yeah. More specifically, I kind of found my home in Chicago. For me, and it's greatly impacted my storytelling, in no small part because it's the crossroad of North America. Like literally, more highways cross through Chicago than any other big city.
True.
More, it's the rail capital of the United States, probably North America, but definitely the United States. It's a crossroads city, and as a consequence, you got a lot of people that come through here. Stories of any type of story crosses through a big city like this, and a lot of comics get made in Chicago too. And I think I don't even I think I'm pretty dang sure I wouldn't be making comics today if I didn't happen to move to Chicago when I did. And
That's interesting.
yeah, despite making comics when I was in middle school, that probably would have been something that stayed there if I didn't move to Chicago and get to know a lot of people that make comics, and not just in a passing way, but be able to like go get a cup of coffee with them and hang out with them at the coffee shop. And I've been
I,
able to make comics with a lot of different people here.
it's funny how big city works, right? Big city kind of concentrate, especially if the type of big city like New York, California, Chicago as well, and Miami is like they concentrate certain demographics of people, especially at the
Yeah,
creative side. So it's very interesting how those scenes evolve, to me at least. And you only notice it when you're outside of it. When you
yeah,
use it and then you leave it, and you be like, wait, I'm not used to not having anything to do today.
yeah. You take it for granted. You take it for granted, and I think a lot of times, the crossroads, the people that do come that maybe aren't born there sometimes get the added benefit of being able to recognize how special it is and take a
Mm-hmm.
little more advantage of the opportunity um,
It,
that's there, because it's
it's
it's a
it,
choose your own adventure. When a city gets this big, or when any city gets big enough, it's a choose your own adventure. And making comics is a choice you can make in a place like Chicago, because hundreds of people, thousands, are doing it.
mhm.
Whereas, if you're in the middle of the cornfield in Iowa or something, um,
You
you're
might
gonna have
find
it. you're gonna have a tough time. You can do it. The digital tools now, are all available for you. That's like the upside. But at the end of the day, you're still gonna want to actually meet people. And I'm going to a convention, several conventions around Chicago in the next few months. There's not going to be
Ooh.
several comic conventions within striking distance if you're not in a big city.
And you know what? I can agree with that. Oh Lord. So let me ask a question before we get too deep in the comic side of life. You describe how would you describe Big Shoulders in 3 words? Because in my mind, I'm thinking Chicago, heavy metal, dragons. Can you unpack what it means to you personally?
Yeah, those were 3 good words, man. Chicago heavy metal dragons. Uh, um, I would say crossroads, hyphenated word is one. Fantasy genre mashup, another hyphenated
God,
one. Yeah.
Uh, you do, yeah. If I remember correctly, you do cross a lot of different storytelling methodologies in your thing. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. One of the most, I mean, I've said crossroads so many times now, but it's accurate. It's a story about crossroads and how in different places around the world you can't define a place with one story, particularly a big city or a place of crossroads. It's all about any number of, infinite number of stories that can take place at once, and all of these stories taking place at once is what makes Big Shoulders not like an anthology of just here's one story, here's another. They're all taking place at once and they intersect. You'll see different characters cross paths and sometimes collide and cross pollinate and make whatever problem is happening in one story that much worse. When the rock band that's using dragon magic to fuel their sound crosses paths with the immortals that are um, trying to take down a video game company that's run by an evil overlord. And suddenly you got pixelated dragons from the video game. These things are gonna cross paths, and we're gonna have a lot of fun with the visuals going back to that
I was
crossing
gonna
element.
say the visuals on that is very interesting. I remember an anime that kind of did someone with that power that could do 2D, 3D stuff that had the stuff at the butt. I'm like, you know how hard it is to follow from your eyes. It does
Yeah,
snap of a button and everything transitions like that. But but the ones that pull it off really do a good job of kind of showing the transition, especially if they set it up right. The transition between you said pixelated, so unlike a flat 2D art or pixelated to a more 3D kind of rendering,
yeah,
if you do it right, it's a very easily transitional thing, and it's a very interesting way of doing art.
yeah. Yeah, so we do get to have a lot of fun with the visuals. Where we Scott Gray is the co-creator and artist on Big Shoulders. He um, gets to have a lot of fun on the page because it's a real world setting. It's very grounded. I think a lot of it is kind of feels more like magical realism. You know, built in the real world with fantastical elements that people kind of allow into their lives as if it's a natural flowing thing. But then some real hardcore fantasy will cross paths along the
So
way.
it's like the Matrix. Or who's looked at the girl in the red dress?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Burn deep into my memory banks. I'll always remember the girl in the red dress.
Okay, so for those just discovering it, what's the story behind Big Shoulders, and what kind of world are you readers stepping into?
So you're stepping into, I said magical realism. Think about the magic you can feel in your life, when you're in a period of change. Another motif in Big Shoulders is we have several characters that are crossing through. It just so happens to be Chicago. It could be anywhere. But think about those moments in your life when you're crossing through, when you're going on a date with the girl or the guy or whoever, that you're all in. This is the moment. You're deep in it, or you're in a band or a creative pursuit. If you're listening, watching this, maybe you want to make comics. You're in that moment where you're in the interview. We got a band that's got their first gig. It's go time. we start our story as late as possible in those stories where, we're seeing the beginning of that date. We're seeing the meeting with the booking agent to get that gig. It's all
Mm,
happening. We're right at that crossroads as we meet these different stories. Um, and we want you to see a bit of yourself in, maybe not all these narratives, but that that moment of, okay, this is it. That's where we jump into Big Shoulders, and that's where, from page one, you'll find yourself.
question. So, how did you come up with the concept of blending like a urban Chicago, great with fantasy mystery characters like Dragon? What made that kind of thing become a thing?
So when I was thinking about this comic, I was thinking a lot about a city, and for me, it's Chicago. A nickname for Chicago is the city of big shoulders, so hence the name. But it could be any big city or nexus point. And I was thinking, okay, how can I tell a story about nexus points? And thinking, kind of being very reflective of, a car's driving by, a plane's driving by, someone's on their bike. Where are all these people going? Where are they coming from? What's the core thing in their head at that moment? And then it developed into a story about crossroads. It developed the story of, crossroads in our lives, and one person is in a murder mystery,
Mm-hmm.
another person is about to, become a rock star. Those two things can be happening at once, and what happens if they get into a car wreck? What if on the crossroads, instead of, what if all of a sudden these two stories
That's a
um,
very,
get
it's a
stuck
very,
together?
it's a very interesting because especially when you think about the world we're in right now and a lot of people's lives right now, everyone's in a like crossroads, um, where what they're used to doing no longer. Let's think COVID for example. When people were doing going COVID, a lot of people experienced that kind of crossroad feeling because it was like the world that they're used to is no longer existing or it's changing, and no, they're spending a lot more time with family than they're used to, especially those with kids. And
Yeah,
so that was a very interesting crossroads for a lot of people. So the mere fact that we're looking at how crossroads intersect not just in your own lives, but in the lives of other people and how those interactions affect each other.
yeah,
Um, I think this is a way of kind of having that same conversation. The only difference is you have dragons.
yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's the heightened reality, to I kind of like to say it's like it's magical realism or fantasy to conjure reality, not to run away from it. It's not pure escapism always.
No, but I was
Um,
gonna say the art and energy of Big Shoulders does feel very alive. And how do you translate musicians metal influence into kind of like that visual art tone? That was kind of like the question on my mind because it feels raw.
yeah,
It feels like something you expect.
yeah, and that's Scott. That's all.
Shout out to Scott.
Shout out to Scott. Yeah, he does a lot of research, because there's a lot of real world settings in the book that he captures extremely well, but also knows when to inject some fantasy into it to make sure it catches the eye. He does the coloring too for most of the book, and finding the right colors to hold
Mm.
attention, and not just be too, finding that balance to capture the reality because it's a real setting, but also give it a whimsy, give it an otherworldly whimsy that almost feels more real than real. That's magical realism, right?
Yeah, and the goal. Actually, I have a question about that later, but for now, I'm just going to be like, so what makes Big Shoulder stand out among other indie comics today? And let's be honest, you're one of a few successful ones that I know. So what makes it stand out?
Yeah. Well, it's a niche. It's its own thing. Um, it's aggressively its own thing. We weren't going after trying to recreate something that already exists at all.
And that's
Um,
good. We
yeah,
don't need. We have a tons of Superman and Spider-Man spin-offs.
yeah, and one of the I even thought, since there's so many stories taking place, there was a period of time where there was one that was also kind of a superhero thing, but it just didn't fit. It just didn't fit. It just didn't have its spot, and that turned out for the better for what we're building.
Okay. So this is like section. We're going to transition a little bit, and we're going to talk about the creative process and like industry insights, right? So for a lot of people, what's can you walk us through your creative process? How do you start your do you start, for example, do you start with your characters? Do you start with a theme or visual first? What's your creative process like?
Yeah, I'm not as visual as I would like to be. It's a visual medium, and I think it's very important to think about each page, each panel, the composition of each page visually. So I have to force that a little bit more. So for me, it is more character, it is more setting, and situation. I can think about even like a moment, like a this would be a really cool moment. How do we lead to it? That's the ocean. That's jumping into the ocean to pull out the idea. That's the easy part. I think the ideas are the easy part. A dime a dozen. It's the polishing them and crafting them together into something cohesive that takes the work.
Mhm.
But to any people out there trying to create and think about it, I would say less focus on the magnum opus of catching Moby Dick, the big white whale, and more focus on getting started, getting those ideas. Say, okay, these are the ideas I got. Maybe I don't have them all. You could spend years or months um, building a foundation and trying to get everything just right for a magnum opus, and that's great. Spend
Mhm.
the time you can, but at some point you just have to go. You just have to
Mhm.
recognize, all right, we're gonna fill in the gaps as we go. It's storytelling. You're literally gonna make it up as you go along. So give yourself some grace. Get a foundation going. Pick out the ideas you can, and then just do it.
And it's okay. And guys, what he basically says, it's okay to be flexible when you create a process because at
Yeah,
the end of the day, it's just about getting it done.
you're right. Yep, just get it done. The more you get done, the better. The easiest, not the easiest, the most common thing in comics and so many other creative efforts is to have all these half baked ideas, a journal with a million ideas. Find something you like that you're like, oh, I would like to spend more time with this. Get it done. Get it done.
So that should brings up a good point, right? Because now I'm going to ask how you collaborate with your art or production team to keep your gritty realism and fantasy focus. Because you're right, it's very easy for us to like have multiple different spans of ideas that can go either with or without story. But a lot of times the decision on that is either with your team when you sit down and you kind of translate that into actual things to be like, not sure if I want that.
Yeah.
So how is that process for you?
That's gonna be hit or miss to an extent, but like you were saying before, getting out and meeting other creators is the key to the game because it's a collaboration. Or not all, some people, some of the best comics ever are people who wrote it, did the art, did it all. That's cool. But if you're a collaborator, or if you're planning to collaborate, it's a relationship. It's a working relationship. We talked also earlier about building something that's unique to your own vision. But in a collaboration, there's compromise. If you're going to compromise with anyone, it should be your collaborator, not trying to build something that you know is popular of the moment. If you're chasing something that's popular right now, by the time you get it out, it won't be popular anymore. So
I
don't
can
worry
think
about
of,
that at all.
I, 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 at one point I said I noticed that a lot of people chase trends. For example, the biggest one right now is I call it the solar leveling trend where everyone can use reincarnation powers.
Oh yeah.
and it's a
Yeah.
and it's a trend of Naruto being able to use cloning.
Okay. So it's a trend of like of taking concepts from video games and putting them into a story, like respawning.
Yes. So it's
Yeah.
like a lot of times it's like unless it really sells your story for a reason, it's like don't include it. Don't run the trend. Just include it
Yeah.
because it actually sells your story better.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of yeah, of a mind that yeah, we've been locked in our screens so much, like you talked about COVID, that I think a lot of the stories we're seeing right now were written in that time period. And we're experiencing that and we're about to drown on it. And yeah, like just
They
going
finally
with
get
this
their stuff.
analogy, yeah, in a year or 18 months, when it's something you're starting right now could at best case be done and out in the world. Um,
Well, I'm working with a friend of mine that's been baking his idea for 20 years. So a lot of
oh,
people
cool,
just
cool.
finally got it out of their
Yeah.
system.
Oh, and there'll always be room for it. I mean, zombies were huge 10 years ago or whatever, and
Yeah.
there's still plenty of room for zombies, even if there was a little overkill. No, no pun intended.
Uh, so actually, here's my last question. So you can't in this section, sorry. Chicago is a recurrent element in your work. How do you make it a character in itself rather than just a setting?
Yeah, yeah. That is thinking visually. We spent a lot of time thinking about the setting of each scene within Chicago and how that setting can feed into the narrative. Meaning, like, there's a scene in the first issue where a character, Coda Walker, is going on a date, and he's got other things going on in his life, and Immortal is literally tasking him with the fate of humanity, but he's like, dude, I got a date. So he goes on a date, even though his head is really split up. But we made sure that date was zoo lights. It's like the holiday season in Chicago, so it's all lit up with like Christmas holiday lights everywhere, and it's very visually engaging and colorful. Um, that is in a comic more interesting than if we spent 5 pages at a restaurant of them talking back and forth. Maybe a
Mm,
steak is brought to the table. But having them walk through something visually interesting, and there's some really cool architecture there, and um,
mm.
sharing that with the artist as we collaborate to say, okay, this is going to bring the scene. They are talking. It's exposition. A lot of storytelling. Ideas that are going to be mined and explored that much more in the chapters to come is given to the reader, but it's visually appealing all the while and holding their eye. Well, hopefully.
What? Well, you did. Let's be honest. You named it Big Shoulder after Chicago. It's going to have a big. It's
Yeah.
going to have a big input
Yeah.
into how the story is told, and it does translate and shows that way.
Cool.
Um, so we're going to transition into our next section, but before we do that, I always have to tell my guests that I need to pay some bills as well. So here on my sponsorship section, and then we'll
Cool.
cut right back into the next section. Give me a moment.
The
Okay, let's get that out the way. Okay, I really need to work on this.
by MyComic.ai, the first of its kind platform built to solve real struggles comic creators like us face. If you've ever felt stuck trying to make consistent sales from your work, this is your solution. MyComic.ai helps you turn your comic into a real business and grow it into a full-time income stream. Check it out today at MyComic.ai.
Thank yous. So everyone, thank you for helping me pay some bills today. Um, so let that as that goes forward, the next thing left is to talk about crowdfunding, community, and talk shows. I don't know how we got onto this, to be honest right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Um, so you've been crowdfunding through Kickstarter, and it's funny because I literally launched a Kickstarter last week,
Oh,
and 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 it's because I've been coming across a lot of comic book creators that said you should do it. So what has been your biggest learning experience from running a campaign?
yeah. Ew, it's the Wild West, man. My first Kickstarter campaign failed.
Okay.
So I've been haunted by crowdfunding and Kickstarter, while also recognizing that it's really a key piece of independent comics. And in fact, a lot of very successful comic creators with big names in the industry kickstart their work because they literally can make more money, and have more creative freedom that way. Um, so there's two forks in the road there. There's independent creators that don't yet have a name for themselves, that for which it's the best path to get their product funded and for it to find an audience. There are thousands, maybe millions of people that.
That's a very interesting thing, right? Because finding an audience is being in a crowded space, and finding your audience is two different things.
Yeah.
So, and it's it's one of those things that, especially for me, as I learn and I'm developing my own platforms and stuff like that, I'm grappling with the concept of, before I used to start off by thinking about distribution. Like, you just want to be where you can get a bunch of distribution, and that makes people go to KDP, for example.
Yeah.
And now they say, oh, there's a lot of people that go on PDP, and it's a big conversation about it, but then you're still lost in the sauce or the weeds. And the question is not, is there a lot of people going to their platforms? There's a lot of people looking for you on those platforms, and that's where audience comes in. And so I think you just pointed out a lot of the first struggles that people who did crowdfunding. I did crowdfunding in Indiegogo back in the day, and it in fact failed too. So
Yeah.
I think the only benefit of Indiegogo is that you get to keep what you raised, opposed to Kickstarter is like, if you don't
Oh,
make it, you lose.
that's a big
And
difference.
yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
But that was, but when you realize, even when you're trying to hit $500 and you still ain't making it, it kind of feels bad.
Yeah.
And it's because finding your audience is now a experience in monetary strength, because you need to throw a lot of money at Facebook and Google, and then a lot of, along with spend a lot of groundwork, kind of being in certain communities so they know your face and they're
Yeah.
aware of it.
Yeah.
So
And that's where, so my second Kickstarter campaign was a success, which was several years after that first failure. And,
mhm.
and it came from studying the platform, understanding it, supporting other creators, um, being a known supporter, so that people pay it forward.
Mhm.
You can't just go, spend a bunch of money supporting Kickstarters and then start your own and expect it. You have to look at what works. People do different promotional videos.
Mhm.
There's a million and one different factors to consider, and try to consider as many of them as you can. Like launching a campaign, you're lucky. I think you launched when you did. If in another week or two, at the time of this recording, it's November 5th, 2025.
Mhm.
If it were even like November 15th, I'd say don't launch a campaign right now.
What?
Because I don't know, how long is your campaign, for instance?
It's 30 days. It's 30
Okay.
days.
So
Mhm.
if you launched it on November 15th, it would go through December 15th. And you know what happens in December? The
Thanksgiving.
holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got
That's
you got
that's what I was. That
Thanksgiving.
was one of my biggest worry as well,
You
in
got
terms of.
Thanksgiving, the holidays, holiday shopping.
Mhm.
People are funny with their money, right? That time of year, the wallets can get kind of tight, stuff like that. This is
Well,
just one of a million different examples. Um, I think you launched yours. The timing is probably avoids most of that.
let's find out. Let's find out.
Let's
I'm doing a
find
lot of.
out.
I'm still in ground. I'm still what do you call it? Pre-launch. Everything is already set up, and all I'm doing right now is just talking to my audience.
Okay. Oh, good, good, good. So the clock hasn't started ticking down yet.
All right. Yes. So, how do you connect with your audience and build loyal readers based between your issues and your campaigns?
That is present of mind right now. I like making comics. I don't like promotion in social media. I like going to conventions. I like you and I met at a convention. You know, like I love that. I love talking with other creators and other people that maybe would want to buy the book or even just like learn about it. That's awesome. But like getting on different social media platforms and marketing the book is like my nightmare. I hate it. So making Big Shoulders the next chapter, Big Shoulders 2 as we're calling it, that is part of my comics life I love right now. I'm gonna record some videos. I was actually meant to be at a convention this weekend, and I was gonna record some promotional videos to use in the months and weeks to come. But that Galaxy Con in Milwaukee was canceled like
Ooh, oh,
like 10
wait!
days
I
before the
just saw an
convention.
ad for that though. They were looking for Galaxy on
They
Pennsylvania. I think it was Pennsylvania.
Okay, so they've got a good handful of Galaxy Con. They're on my naughty list right now though, because they straight up canceled. And I would have made different plans. My whole convention planning would be I did Baltimore Comic Con, then Galaxy was really the big one for the next 6 weeks, but that's just gone. Anyways,
Mm.
all to say that promotion is tricky. Every project's a little different. What your book uh, is going to lead you in different ways. My book has rock bands, and I could go. I could do.
Well, you did say you went to a winery at one point.
Did I? Um, Might have been at a winery. I wasn't selling my book. No. But yeah, your book, like every book could have a different, like yours, for instance, you could go to like different like tech expos and stuff.
Mhm.
Apollo's Run, if you could literally, I mean, that might be very particular, but the marketing for your book should be what makes sense for your book. Comics
And
convention is the catch-all, but like there are different interesting ways to think about
and I will
each book.
say this. This year when I started going to Comic Cons, I realized that there's a very specific theme that people associate with my comic book, which is sci-fi. That that if I met someone that was in sci-fi, they got the book. It wasn't a hard sell. Even if I didn't sell anything, it was like they would sit there and listen to me. Versus anybody else that would like they were in fantasy, they were in like other kind of genres,
Yeah,
it would be a different kind of sales experience. And I realized that I was like, wait, there is such a thing as sci-fi conferences.
yeah, there is, man. Totally, totally.
Why did I even think about that? So that's why I would say to a lot of guys on when it comes to marketing and selling your books, like once you figure out the what they call the genre of your book, find locations that actually support those genres, because you'll be surprised how easier your sales process become when you're around your audience or your right people.
You've heard me talk about Chicago a lot. If
Mhm.
I'm at a con in Chicago, it's a lot easier for me to sell my book. Um, for that reason, so like I'm prioritizing kind of local regional things. I don't want my story to only be, only interesting for people that are in Chicago, because like other places, stories that take place in New York, for which New York is a central character, the whole world
Spider-Man,
eats
for
them up.
example. Yeah,
Spider-Man's a
Spider-Man.
perfect example.
Yeah.
Um, but New York kind of has like a gravitational pull. Um, Whereas, people might read my story and be like, "Oh, it's only for people in the Chicago."
Oh, because in their mind, they will, people from Chicago get some of the references that you're trying to make versus people from
Oh,
outside of
oh
Chicago.
yeah, there is that. There is some inside baseball. Like you're going to get a little extra if you've been around the area. But our hope is that it's a story that anybody would really dig, and you might just dig it. You might just get a little extra oomph out of it if you're familiar with Chicago.
Okay, so as I told you before, what thing would you think tell comic book creators that they need to know to be a success in their space? What is your quotable moment?
Complete as many projects as you can. We said that before. And a good way to make that actually happen is to focus on smaller projects. Actually, a really good tactic is to do short stories, find anthologies. There's at any given time, there's usually some anthologies happening. And anthologies are like collections of short stories. And it could be a sci-fi themed anthology or horror or fantasy or, whatever the case might be. Little like 3-4 page stories. It's going to be easier to finish those. And in each 3 or 4, this is what I did at least, and I know a lot of other people who did this. If you're working with an artist or a writer or whatever, each one of those 3 or 4 page projects is an opportunity to collaborate and learn, it's like dating, learn how to be in a relationship, learn how to do it. And, comics have a beginning, a middle, and an end, the story itself, but also the creation of it. Getting some repetition and getting a feel for the rhythm of the full cycle. If you do short projects, you can get that rhythm going. If you decide I'm just going to do a magnum opus, and I did do this, one of my first projects was a 200-page graphic novel. It took us 5 years,
I could see it.
We fortunately, the artist and I both had this was called Packs of the Low Country. It was a rad project. I'm really proud of it. But we probably should have done a few short stories first. But that's my advice: is get some short projects going. If you've never done a comic before, make a 2-page one right now. Even if you're a crappy artist, draw a 2-page story and see how it, look up how to fold a zine. A zine is like a short comic that's literally just like some folded paper. Make a zine. Make a few of them. The more you make, the better. Get the rhythm. Get the rhythm of making comics. Find collaborators. If you can't find any collaborators, do it all yourself, and then find collaborators and learn how to do it.
I would say there's plenty of opportunities out there from working with the production studio that already does it, and you just come up with a story and be the creative director on that story. Because that's what I do with certain people that I work with.
Oh, cool.
All the way to just kind of learning to do it yourself, DOI. Kind of comes down to what's best situated for you, and there's a lot to unpack there. So I would say that's a very good idea, guys. Make it smaller by chunk sizes. So you might not have 5 years to do an entire book. You probably could break it down into make it a page. For example, one of my guests did say what he did to kind of get motivated into doing it was just get a page done. That's it.
Yeah.
It's because if he gets a page done, he gets a seed, he gets a fell in love with it again. And I find that even when I'm working with people, just show them a page. That alone sells more than you can ever imagine. So guys, small bites. It's they said the best way to eat an elephant, one bite at a time. So what's your next big what's next for Big Short? What kind of legacy do you leave?
Yeah, so we're working on Big Shoulders #2. We've got a pre-launch page on Kickstarter.
See?
I would say there's a notify button there.
Yes.
I haven't really been advertising it as much, but there's also, you can read the first issue digitally. So go to Big Shoulders on Kickstarter. Look at the second issue. There's a link. You can read the first issue. And I'm gonna paywall it at some point. So, but I'm feeling good right now. So get on that, or at the very least, there's a free preview. But if you hit the notify button, all things Big Shoulders. I'm not gonna spam emails at you. But you'll get to know when more is coming. I also I run a Substack called Making Comics. Guess what it's about?
I was going to ask you, where can people find you for follow-ups and updates?
That's the spot. Making Comics on Substack.
It's funny because I've not even started Substack yet, but I've been hearing some good stuff about it. So
I'm new to it. I'm new to it. I've been doing it for like 6 weeks, and but I'm gonna keep at it because it's like a newsletter, you know.
I'm
Um,
thinking about taking this entire story onto that to see if it does good there as well.
cool.
Um, but I don't. I'm gonna. But you see, the thing is, that's a process on a program in itself, and I'm like, what, 12 episodes or 13 episodes in now. I'm not looking forward to moving so much
There's
content.
no barrier for entry though. Substack is you don't have to pay for it. Anybody who subscribes, the email address is yours. That it's and you can take it elsewhere.
Yes, that was
So
one of the big selling
and
points of it.
you can use your existing content. You know, you can post your videos there, whatever. Here I am selling Substack. What do I know? I'm still feeling that one out, but that's a good place where I'm spending a lot of time on Substack.
Okay, that's great. Everyone, again, I wanted to thank John. This was an awesome conversation. Big
Thanks, Sean.
Shoulders is such a unique mix of metal, mystery, and Midwest energy, and I know people are going to love it. To everyone
Thanks.
watching, make sure that you're back his project on Kickstarter. Follow John for updates. This has been Behind the Comics, where we dig into the minds of comic book creators shaping the future of indie comics. I am Sean Fuller, your host, creator of Apollo's Run, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thank you.